Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase it all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. For this episode, we have a kind of a first of interviews for us. This is the first time we have a lot of people for an interview, it seems like.
We do. We have Jennifer Rizzo, Eric Chen, and Randon Morisako, who are all members of APATS, which is the Asia Pacific Athletic Trainers Society. They are a group of professional athletic trainers who are all working in Asia. The bulk of their group is in Greater China, so mainland, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, but they also have members in Belgium, Thailand, Vietnam, and Japan. And we got to sit down with them and got to pick their brains about what it's like to work in China specifically, what it's like to order out there.
I was going to say, just the logistics that we take for granted as athletic trainers, it's totally different for them.
Totally different. Things that I didn't even think about before we sat down and talked with them. Some stuff that it just blew my mind. And then also lots of similarities that what is it like being an athletic trainer who used to practice in the U.S. and is now going on to a different country.
What's funny is there were a lot of parallels to a lot of the things we have to do as athletic trainers here, they have to do out there as well.
They also share, if you guys are interested in working internationally, they also share some tips on how to get started in that and how to really go down that avenue. So you want to introduce them, Randy?
Yes. So Jennifer Rizzo received her doctorate in education from United States Sports Academy. She also has an MBA from Concordia University, Irvine. Her Bachelor's of Arts in Exercise and Sports Science from Concordia University, Irvine as well. She's worked at Concordia University, Irvine as an athletic trainer, clinical education coordinator, program director, associate faculty. She currently works at Concordia International School, Shanghai, in Shanghai, China. She's been there for 4 years. Eric Chen received his Master's of Arts in Kines Sports Management from Cal State Long Beach. He also received his Bachelor of Science in Kines Sports Management from Fresno State. He's worked at LA Community College District, Cirque du Soleil, United Family Hospital, Varsity ICU, Disneyland, and the film industry, arena football, and taekwondo. He's been working in China for 12 years.
And now is back near us.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And lastly, we have Randon Morisako. He received his Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training from Chapman University.
Where apparently we just missed each other.
Yes, that's right.
This is so nuts.
And was also had, an interaction with our good friend Scott Lee.
Oh, yeah.
That's
who we
right.
had on our PT-AT episode.
Yes, long ago. That was
one of our first ones, actually.
Back when we were babies. He received his Master's of Arts in Kinesiology with an emphasis in athletic training from San Jose State University. Randon has worked at UC Santa Cruz, the Institute of Western Surgery. He did a 1-year internship in China and was placed at the school he currently works at, which has been 5 years.
It was actually really, really cool for me to hear how they all got to start working in China and how not all of them had expected to start working in China. So why don't we just get started with that?
Yes, let's hear from our trio here. All right, so we've never had this many people on before, so we had to kind of change up our cryo breakers from normal. So we'll start off with, how did you start working in China?
So Asia was never, or China was never something that was even on my radar for a place to work. It's someplace that I wanted to go, but with the language barrier, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to end up even traveling to China to see the country. And I used to work at a university in Southern California, and the provost there ended up being the head of school at Concordia International School, Shanghai. And so she reached out to me when the person before me was leaving and asked if I could help her find an athletic trainer to go into the school. And then at the very bottom, she put a line that said, and we would be really interested if you would apply. And And I was like, that's great. I forwarded on the email to a bunch of people, deleted it. I was like, there's no way I'm moving to China. You gotta be kidding me. And it just continued to just like process in my brain. And I just didn't know what to do with that information. I was like, well, China sounds cool. I think I might want a profession change. I don't really know. And so I was like, I got nothing to lose. And so I ended up applying. And next thing you know, I'm accepting a position. And sight unseen, never even made it to China to see the country or the school. And ended up coming here. So,
oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really plans on going to China. It just kind of happens. So like I just finished grad school, and it's like, where am I gonna work next? I'm perusing through the NATA Career Center, and then I find this internship. It's like a year-long internship in China at a school. They're going to pay you chips, like $500 a month, but they're going to give you an apartment. They'll pay for your airfare, and like it's relatively cheap to live out there. So I applied to a bunch of these jobs, and I threw in the internship as well. And then I ended up getting the internship. I was like, do I want to go to China? It's just for a year. And after that year, it's like, oh, I kind of want to stay. And then it turned to a part-time job. Then it turned to a full-time job. And 6 years later, I'm still here in China.
Nice. That's awesome.
So for me, I actually somewhat did have a plan to go to China, rather a goal. It wasn't a very firm goal, but for me, it's a little bit different. I'm second generation, immigrant family, so I still have ties, to Asia, and that region specifically. So yeah, so was working in traditional setting out here in Southern California, and then joined the circus, ran away with the circus, and moved to China. When Cirque du Soleil was opening a show in Macau. So I got that job because a friend of mine actually had started working for Cirque, and she was kind of prompting me, giving me tips how to get through the interview, and they hired me. So 2008, rolled out there, was there for 4 years, and this was right during the recession and the crash. So there was all kinds of struggles financially with everybody. Show was never too financially successful. So ultimately it closed, and we were all cut loose. So that was 2012. And then I had the opportunity to move to Guangzhou with a company called United Family, which was a clinic at the time, with the understanding of building a hospital. So United Family is the largest private healthcare, premium healthcare provider in China. So for me, that was what struck my interest of going out there. I was like, well, we're going to design and build a hospital. So I got brought in and actually build the rehab department. They didn't have rehab at the time, and they were actually sending all of the PT patients to IWS, across the street. And so the GM was like, no, we got to try and keep this in house. So good timing. And so they hired me on. And, it was the opportunity to help design. I designed and built up a rehab department, a physical therapy rehab department for a hospital, which, would never happen in the United States. Those opportunities, unless you're an MBA or you move into administration, it just doesn't happen. So did that for 7-8 years, whatever it was. In 2019, end of 2019, decided to wrap it up and moved on. Now I'm back in Southern California.
I like how, a lot of those stories, it kind of adds up to like how most people like stay at their jobs for a long time. You weren't really expecting it, and then just it's like one of those things where like, well, it's been this many years, still going strong. That's awesome. That's really cool.
In AT Corner, we love to pair evidence and experience. So if we could kick off this episode with a story or experience or case study about working in China that's funny, serious, etc., just to kick us off.
So pre-COVID, a big part of working internationally is having to travel for certain tournaments and going to other schools, other countries to play. And it was either my first or second year we're down in Hong Kong for a tournament, and it was rugby. So it was pretty intense. And by the end of the weekend, I had 3 players in CAS. So,
oh man,
2 broken ankles, 1 like grade 2 sprained ankle. So, in a tournament, maybe that's quite a bit, but then having to go to the airport and then fly 5 hours back to Beijing. But the fun part about it is we had the VIP treatment because they rolled them on wheelchairs, and airplanes sometimes in China, they're on the tarmac, so they're not through a gate. So in order to get the players onto the plane, they loaded us onto this special truck that lifted us up to the plane, and then we just rolled right in. So from check-in to the plane, it was like we skipped all these lines and we just went into the plane on the backside. So it was a fun story about traveling and working in China.
That's really cool.
How to get on a plane fast, get hurt.
You know, living international provides a lot of fun stories, just because it is so different from what you have in the U.S. And so you go into a tournament thinking, I've worked 1,000 volleyball tournaments, and I know exactly how this is going to go. We're going to have the traditional injuries, things are going to unfold. But the cool thing is the first tournament that I went to here was an international tournament. And so our conference has 5 different countries involved in it. And so we have to collect passports and get visas and get all this stuff together. And so the very first tournament I went to was actually in Korea. And I'm working there. You know, EAPs there's no athletic trainers at some of these other schools. And so emergency action plans, who knows what they are, right? And so I created a pretty decent relationship with the nurse at the school kind of right off the bat. And so we had a kid that we ended up having to spine board, and spine boarding was hilarious and scary at the same time, because like you're in a country and you just don't know how things are going to unfold. So we finally get this kid in the ambulance, and we end up with 4 other people that have to go to help us translate. And so there's English speaking. I don't know the language the other kids spoke, but it was not Mandarin and it wasn't English. So we had to have a translator to help us translate to the kids' parents. We had to have a translator to help translate from the doctor to the nurse that was there, who then could translate into English, who then could translate. Then we had another person translate into Mandarin. So we have this like big circle of translation happening. And one thing you learn first off is nothing translates very well. And so everything's lost in that moment. And so we had this kid on a spine board. By the time we got to the hospital, his C-collar's undone. He's unstrapped on the spine board. So like we're trying to strap him back in on the gurney, get him in there. And then the doctor's like, stand up and just lay on the x-ray machine. We're like, but we just spine boarded him. Like, we can't take him off this board. So luckily there was another athletic trainer there. So both of us had to put him onto the x-ray machine to get him x-rayed. Like, it was just a process. They wouldn't touch him. They wouldn't move him. And so it was quite the circus trying to get one kid to the hospital and cleared to be able to fly the next morning to go back to mainland China. So
that is an intense and complex game of telephone right there.
Oh my gosh.
It really is.
Oh
And
my
how
god.
unsuccessful the game of telephone is exactly how unsuccessful it is when you're trying to translate in 3 or 4 languages.
And
Then
I'm sure
add in
it's
the
tough
spine boarding part too, right? It's like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, spine boarding in a different county can be a little tricky, let alone a different country.
Yep. When I got into our school that I was at, I asked our nurses for our emergency action plan. And so I'm reading through this, and it says, what numbers to call and things like that. And then underneath it, it says ambulance is not preferred. It says call a DD unless you absolutely have to have ambulance transport. So
Wow.
DD is basically Uber in China. And so literally, unless it is a spinal injury where you can't move that kid, they say just to throw them in because it's way faster, it's easier, and you can get them where they need to be better. So our emergency action plan says call a taxi.
You know what? That's better than what I thought. I thought Dee Dee was a person. Like, I thought you literally had to call this person. They will take them. Dee Dee's got it.
Yeah, but then you get into a situation where, like, if someone has like a significant injury, then some of the DD drivers or the Uber drivers might be like, no, I don't want to take an injured person. So then it's like, okay, let's call the next DD and see what happens there.
Oh shoot!
Wow, this is interesting.
Because
I know.
talking back about the ambulances, there's different companies that send ambulances, and some can be fully stocked, some can be like bare minimum van with a bed in it. So you actually have to be pretty specific if you do need an ambulance. Hey, we need an ambulance with this, and this.
Oh, wow.
Which for some of us who don't have the language is like, all right, let's play that telephone game again. It's like, okay, let's ask this person to tell this person to get the ambulance with this thing and this thing and this thing.
No, it's because the ambulances are staffed and packed by the hospitals. So usually what it is, it's like you say which like hospital. If you just say whatever, then they just give you whichever one's available, whoever's closest. Because at least back then, because I did research in this after that football situation, they have a standard, but not all hospitals follow that standard because those standards are the 120 standard, but those are only like the top level hospitals can follow the 120 standard. If you've got some like marginal hospital, if you're in a smaller city or if you're near a medium-sized smaller hospital, then they may not be able to hold those standards. That's why there's a bit of fluctuation. But again, it's those hospital or the ambulances. I mean, yeah, a lot of their equipment can leave much to be desired.
This
And
is
when you get to
never-
the hospital, you actually pay for the ambulance right there. So you'll
Yeah.
just WeChat money.
Oh.
And that's how you pay for it.
Yeah,
Wait, what?
yeah.
This is stuff I never would have even
Imagine.
thought of
Yeah.
to
You have to pay for service.
And it's not
Yeah.
like super expensive like it is in the States. Like it could be like a couple hundred kwai, which would be like $20-$30 US standard.
emergency taxi.
Well, but it's not expensive if you convert, like from our perspective, counting in US dollars. But if you're counting for the people who actually live there and locals and stuff, so it's like, okay, 300 RMB is like $50 or whatever it is. Okay, fine, no big deal. But if it was 300 US dollars for us, that's kind of how it plays out. So when the expat world, it's a little bit different compared to the local. So that's why they don't do a lot of ambulances because not everybody can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
So this begs the question: how else is working in China different from working in the U.S.? You're like so many ways.
Well, one
Reasons.
caveat I have to say is for us working in, or at least for me working in China, I wasn't working in China like, you know, a community public hospital or a community public clinic. You know, we typically, my employer when I was at Circus, that was a closed environment, like if you're working for a pro team. But when I was at the clinic and the hospital, it was more targeted towards expats, you know, international people or Chinese people, Chinese nationals who were quite wealthy. Hence, they probably had some international experience. So the behavior and stuff was a little bit different.
Rizzo and I work at an international school. So basically, all our kids are foreign passport holders. They speak English for the most part. So like language, there is a language barrier, but there isn't a language barrier. So like when we speak to the students, unless we're playing like a local school, that maybe their students don't speak any English, then you might need to use a translator. Some of the kids that need to help translate what's hurting, where is it hurting, that type of thing. But I think for me, the language barrier is mostly with parents. Some of them are first generation, not English speaking parents. So like having to let, you know, a parent know like, hey, you know, your kid had a concussion. These are the things that you have to look for. Sometimes if there's a Chinese speaking parent, we can have one of our nurses who speaks Chinese relay that information. If it's less severe, sometimes we'll even use the kids to kind of translate. And honestly, the best way is probably to leave an email because I guess they can use Google Translate or I guess Weibo Translate to kind of say like, oh, this is what this guy is saying. If I have any questions, I can send another email back.
Yeah, and you see a lot of cultural differences in how parents respond to injuries. So you'll get really minor injuries, and the parent will take the child to the hospital for any amount of pain. It doesn't matter how small or how big. And that can be really frustrating because the doctors here tend to be very conservative with how much rest they want. So like my best example is I had a kid go to the hospital for a pretty significant sized blister on his foot. And the doctor told his parents that he would get gangrene and lose his toe. Well, we all know that it's just a blister and we need to treat it and we need to make sure it's clean. But like for the most part, that blister is going to heal in a couple days and the kid's going to be just fine. And so mom and dad pulled him out of all sports for a week because he was not allowed to practice for 7 to 10 days. And then he wasn't allowed to wear shoes to school. And so it was like this weird, like, and so the principal's calling and being like, why is this kid not in uniform? Well, because the doctor told him that he's not allowed to wear shoes because his toe is going to fall off. And so it was this big educational curve for the child to learn, hey, come to my office first before you go to the hospital. But you see a lot of like knee-jerk go to the hospital reactions from parents for things that we would consider super minor and very treatable on campus.
Yeah, you'll also get like a grade 2 ankle sprain maybe put in a cast. And it's like, I really want to start rehab, but this doctor's note said it's going to be 6 weeks till we take the cast off. Or sometimes you'll get like some traditional Chinese medicine creams and ointments on people that turn their skin green. It's like, I don't know if that's right, but I don't want to be culturally insensitive. So like, you do that today, and then tomorrow we'll do some Western things and rehab and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has it been having to balance, coming from a kind of Western medicine background and knowledge to balancing that with an area that, believes and has a lot of respect for Eastern medicine? How do you balance that?
I think one of the biggest things, really quick, is I guess making sure that heat isn't put on acute injuries. I think Asia in general is very big advocate of like hot water, putting heat packs on. And we know that if you apply heat too early, that could actually increase the swelling. So just making sure that, hey, for the next couple days, ice may help, but I know we're against ice, but maybe just don't put heat quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to ask, do you have a patch on, or does your mom or dad want to put a patch on? And I don't know what's in these patches, but mom and dad really like them. So you just kind of work around these patches. And so I've learned to ask those questions. I've talked to our school nurses who love warm water. Like that is their solution to almost everything. And so I love my nurses to death. Like they're so great. But we had this huge debate over, so we have like first aid kits that we give our coaches. And in those first aid kits are basic just OTCs, right? And so there's like Tums, China's version of Tums in these. Mm-hmm. The nurses are like, well, I don't want these in this first aid kit. And I was like, well, just in case a kid has an upset stomach, this is like a great quick solution. And she goes, just give them warm water. I was like, yeah, in the middle of a basketball game, like warm water just doesn't cut it, And so it's very interesting to dialogue about what we think is common sense versus what everyone here thinks is common sense. And so like trying to blend those, it's actually been a really cool learning curve for me. And I mean, we still use like a lot of like acupuncture here, but they don't use acupuncture in the way that we think they use acupuncture. So it's been very different to like learn, like, yes, about the meridians and stuff like that. But I've had kids come back with like a grade 2+ ankle sprain, and they look like they had a pin cushion, like thousands of pins in their ankle. And I was like, what are these little holes? And they're like, I did acupuncture yesterday. So it's a very different like, blend between Eastern and Western, but not in like the traditional like acupuncture versus eat them. Yeah. It's more of just kind of like the theory of heat versus cold, warm water, that kind of stuff. It's different.
Interesting. So along the lines of the differences between working, between the two countries, what challenges have you faced, working in China compared to like when you were, like just overall, just what challenges have you faced working in China?
So even in China, like each city is completely different and has different challenges. Um, Me in Beijing, like there's not, I guess, a lot of sports medicine support that I've found. Like I've tried to reach out to sports medicine physicians, and I tried to gear it towards maybe more foreign trained professionals. And I can count like 3 times where I've reached out to a doctor to kind of build a relationship. And then 3 or 4 months later, they're like, yeah, China's not working out for me, or my company wants me back, or my family wants me back. And it's like I've been broken up 3 times by these doctors. And I'm like, it's hard to build those relationships. I have some relationships with some doctors, but maybe not so much sports medicine specific. And I think with this international school, we're such a small part of the medicine world here in China that they might not want to spend so much time at a school. I think in Shanghai it's a little different. They have a little bigger foundation, but that's something that I've been constantly working on, and at some point, hopefully we can get it to work out a little better here.
Yeah. For me, I would say a lot of it is probably just logistics and understanding how entities and people operate. It's kind of difficult to figure out. I mean, and that is anything from supplies and equipment to policies and procedures, and it's hard. It's like, if I'm here in LA, I've never been to say like Boston. I just suddenly moved to Boston the next day for a job, and you're just trying to kind of plug yourself in, right, to the local system. There's going to be challenges and stuff. So if you just imagine trying to do that with a language barrier, the cultural barrier. Fortunately, I can speak Mandarin, but I'm basically illiterate. So where a lot of times nowadays you can find everything on the internet, and that's true everywhere. But unfortunately, it still doesn't work for me because I can't read it. So then you just end up going around. It's like back to the old school days. You just got to start finding people and talking to people and, sorting things out. And that takes time. That takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. So absolutely. I would say, yeah, a lot of logistics would probably be the most difficult part.
I thought the language was going to be the hardest part for me, and I think it was for the first 6 months. It was I don't know how to explain it until you've actually been here and done it, but like I would get home from school at the end of the day and I would be in bed passed out by like 6 o'clock, just absolutely exhausted. I was talking to someone, I was like, I don't understand why I'm so tired. Like, this is a normal work day. It's actually, the work-life balance is significantly better here. So why am I so exhausted? And someone explained it really well of just your brain has to be going 24/7 to be able to translate, to be able to listen, to be able to understand. And there's so much to process and think through. It was just so exhausting. And now about the 6-month mark was kind of when I was like, okay, I'm finding my groove. I can now walk into like just a grocery store and figure out what the heck I'm doing. But just understanding, like, the culture started to get a little bit easier to understand, and like kind of work through all that stuff. For Shanghai, I walked into a city with 4 other athletic trainers at the time. And so it helped that transition be a lot smoother. We also have 2 huge international, like, American schools in Shanghai that are really well developed. And so they were able to help me figure out, how do I place my order? When does all that happen? What can we ship? What we can't ship? How do we find braces last minute? Like, they were able to connect me. And so I think that transition was a lot smoother, at least for in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Talking about like the first 6 months, I remember my first 6 months, there was a restaurant right underneath my apartment, and it was like a whole wall was the menu. There was no pictures. And I remember the thing that me and one of the other athletic trainers, we came in together, and our thing was like, okay, just point and pray. So we would order by saying, okay, we're going to point at something and we're going to pray that we enjoy it. But if not, we're just going to order something else. But I remember it's like point and pray. Point, yep, right there. We want that. And for the most part, it worked out pretty well. But I
I was gonna
remember
ask.
just saying
I
that.
was gonna ask, how was that success rate on successful food?
I would say 75%, if not more. Like,
Hey,
yeah, it's just not bad. It's sometimes you might get things that you're not used to, like more of like because in China they don't like to waste any part of the animal, so you'll get like the liver and then intestines, and it's like, I'll try it, but I don't know if I'm gonna eat a whole dinner out of it. So point and pray was how it all started.
It's the motto. What do you live by?
And after 4 years, we still point and pray.
But now you have WeChat Translate. There's translation software. You can take a picture and things can get translated for you now.
Yeah, but at 9 times out of 10, it's something about a rabbit. I don't really know why rabbit translates so much in English, but
going off
Yeah.
what you're saying, Rizzo, one of the other things a lot of expats find hard moving to China is just the pace of society. Like you go and you think, okay, I'm going to get this job and whatever. We come so for all of us coming from the US, the closest I would say would probably be like New York or Washington DC or something. But I mean, it's the society, like it's high pressure because the density in these big cities. To give you an example, so like Shanghai, the greater Shanghai area is probably about the size of like the greater Los Angeles area. If you kind of fold like the San Fernando Valley down to the South Bay, it's about that. But the greater Shanghai area, last count, if I recall correctly, is 20 million people. It's 3/4 of the state of California, and that's pretty much what like all the cities, Beijing, Guangzhou, all these places. So everywhere you go, it's high density and people are on the move. The metros, the buses, whatever you're on. If you're on a taxi, like everybody's right up against you, and that feeling is very uncomfortable if you're not used to it. It takes it. A lot of people, actually, a lot of expats going in, like they don't survive that very well, So that actually turns a lot of people away. But eventually, you get over it, and hence that's why the guys and gals who stay are still around. But that culture is very, very difficult at times.
I feel
So,
for Rizzo and I, like we work in an international school, and we're constantly surrounded by foreigners, and that network and community, you kind of find things that are, I guess, recognizable and that feel comfortable. So like finding that network, and my school is kind of outside of the city for the most part, so like it's kind of like a bubble, if you will. Like they have like a huge mall that has all these Western foods. Foreigners are driving cars. Like it's you don't get all that hustle and bustle, but like for some of us who live in the city or you go to the city, like absolutely you get cars not stopping in the crosswalks for you. You got to look left, right, up and down before you cross streets. Bikes are going this way and that way. Yeah, there's a lot, but I think once you spend the time and find some of your inner comforts, it gets a lot easier.
we just had Costco open up in Shanghai and Five Guys. And so life changed.
who doesn't love Costco?
Or Five
I mean,
Guys.
I could do a whole nother year after Costco came in.
So, I like how you guys kept bringing up logistics and like just the simple aspect of ordering stuff, is something that we take for granted as US based ATs. I remember you guys said your ordering and just logistics overall is a lot different.
For supplies.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we have to order things from the United States, certain things like you can buy a Chattanooga ultrasound unit in Shanghai or in China, but part of the problem is that all comes in Mandarin. And so for me, I'm not comfortable having a machine with a language that I don't speak. And so we'll order an ultrasound unit from the US. Well, first off, we all know that those are about $5,000, right, for a combo unit. But you have to multiply that by 2 in order to get the shipping in order, so it's super expensive. So everything's at least double, if not triple. And then we do all our annual orders in December, January. So probably in the next 3 weeks, we're going to start placing our order to have it shipped by August for the start of school. We'll place our order now. So like for me, I have to guess how much tape I'm going to use for season 3, which is soccer, which is kind of the more tape heavy season. So you end up placing an order for a bunch of things and you just don't know if you're actually going to end up using it or not. Because we all know like every year kind of goes in waves. Like some year we tape 1 million ankles and some years you tape none. And so you just have to guess all the way through. And that applies not just to athletic training stuff. Like we place all of our teachers, like for books and for supplies and everything. All those orders happen in January.
Yeah,
Interesting.
we've been pretty fortunate. Mueller, they actually have a warehouse out in China, with a distributor company. So like they've actually housed like certain emergency supplies. So like white tape, if you run out or you need a box for a tournament, you can send a quick message to somebody and they'll give you a box in like 3 days. But if you want any more specific equipment like the ultrasound, the game ready, the hydroculator, like those are things that they're gonna run up a pretty penny because, like Rizzo said, they have to ship it up to us. There's also like a Chinese Amazon that we have called
okay.
Taobao. So they have a bunch of things on there. And I think Amazon has it now too, but there's like a image search type function. So you take a picture of what you want and then it'll pop up all these different things. I guess the only problem with it is you don't really know what the quality of that product is. So you might buy it for like, oh, it's really cheap. It's only a few dollars. But then the first time you use it, it breaks or it's not exactly what the image said it was. But for simple things like I found like elastic bands on there. And for the most part, it works pretty well. But any sports medicine specific stuff, we're going through that annual order 8 months before we really need it.
Wow.
I had to order a new game ready hose. With COVID, it sat so long that all the like rubber on the inside of it ended up breaking. And so I ordered it, and I think it's like $75 if you buy it in the States on the catalog. And I found a vendor here in Shanghai that actually sells it. Actually, I think he's in Beijing. And so I purchased it for over $300 US.
Wow.
And I bought it in China, delivered in China. So it never had to go back to the US. It never came from the US. It took like 4 days to get it, but it cost us a lot of money to get it.
Oh my goodness.
Rizzo, you were talking about Sport 3 as soccer. Can you explain the system that you guys have with how athletes, are they multiple sport athletes or how does that work?
Yeah, our seasons, we just call them season 1, 2, and 3. There are some differences from the US, and I guess in the US we kind of change a little bit too, but for our conference, season 1 is boys and girls volleyball. Brandon, what else do we have season 1?
Baseball, tennis, cross country.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then we have, we were boys and girls rugby separate. And then this past year, because of COVID, our numbers are down. So they transitioned to a co-ed touch.
And then season 2 is table tennis and boys and girls basketball. And then season 3 and swimming. And then season 3 is badminton, boys and girls soccer. I'm missing one in there. Softball.
Badminton.
Yeah. So all the sports are kind of we just label them season 1, 2, and 3. And then the kids, at least for our school, our kids all register their like priorities. So they'll register like sport 1, 2, and 3 for season 1, sport 1, 2, and 3 for season 2. And then they can decide what sport they end up wanting to get into. And so a lot of our kids are season 1, 2, and 3 athletes. So they'll play volleyball, badminton, and soccer all the way through their career. So they'll learn a lot.
What's pretty unique is our seasons are like 8 to 10 weeks. So I think one of the downfalls is if there's any significant injury in the season, then their season, maybe a couple seasons are done for them. So kind of managing like, okay, we can push you a little bit to finish this season, but it might put next season at risk. And there's hard end and start dates. So like there's no like extended playoffs in our conference. We have a end of the year tournament typically pre-COVID where the kids are able to travel to different countries and play against schools from inside China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, or the Philippines. And then once that tournament is done, that season's done, and all those kids playing a season one sport can transition to season two. So there's no overlap like there is in the States, where like they'll miss like a month because they're in like state tournaments or anything like that. They just go from sport to sport, which is a huge benefit for the kids, I think, in that aspect.
But the downside of that is we really don't have kids that specialize. So you really don't see many kids that play year-round one sport. So the level of play is different here than it is in the US for sure.
Okay. And also, you know, at least like some sport athletes, like once their sport's done in the US, you can be like, oh man, that kid was annoying. Thank God season's done. It sounds like you don't get that benefit. They just keep rolling through.
They do.
So, what other settings do ATs work in, like in countries like China?
So for the ones that I've met, so international schools, I was working, you know, traditional clinical setting, clinic, hospital type place, sports training centers. So like provincial and national, so government organized, you know, provincial and national level. So Olympic kind of committee stuff. The Chinese sports system's a little bit different, you know, old communist style. So they have their national teams. It's almost like if you look at it as minor league baseball, hockey, right? So every province has an official training center, usually in their provincial capital. And then each, you know, city and region and yada, it just goes down, you know, and everybody feeds up to Beijing to the national team, whoever makes the cut.
Okay.
So athletic trainers have worked in those areas. Entertainment, like we were saying, you know, Shanghai Disneyland had an athletic training team when they opened. Pro sports, you know, they'll contract with. So when we say athletic trainers, it's a bit of everything because they'll contract like people from other countries, so like sports physios, things are similar. Like if you go look at you know, the World Federation, they have it all defined for you. But sports physios, athletic trainers, ATs, ATPTs, I guess. Entertainment, we said. What else? Oh, traveling. You know, people that come, you know, NFL, NBA come and does exposition games. They obviously will have, you know, their staff.
We actually had a cool setup with the NBA. They came out to Shanghai to play, and so did college, NC2A college. And this was pre-issues with the NBA, but they would practice in our gym, and that was really fun. So we'd have like, right before COVID, LeBron was supposed to come out, and he was going to practice in our gym. And so like it was this huge thing because like you have to like manage security, and then you've got to manage how to transport them, and of course they bring their entire medical staff. But that was kind of a fun experience to be able to help them plan their EAPs and then the different facilities that they were practicing at and playing at, and kind of explain how it all works with them because it's definitely different.
That's cool. That's so cool.
So with that, do you feel like people know what athletic trainers are? Where you guys are at?
I think internally in our communities, for us at international schools, I think they do. It's one of those things, once you experience an athletic trainer, see what they can do, you can't unsee it, and you always want it. I think with the doctors that we work with, the doctors that our kids commonly see, they're definitely starting to understand what we do, what we're capable of. And I've had like some PTs and doctors that I work with, they're like, hey, you know, just go see Randon, is what the kids tell me. Oh yeah, they just told me to come see you. It's like, yeah, it'll work. So definitely building that relationship with external providers, with the parents and with the kids. And it's come to the point where it's like, oh yeah, if you're hurt, just go see Randon. So it's kind of like it's all about building relationships, right? And I think that we've done a pretty good job in the international setting, at least international school setting, of building those relationships.
I definitely agree. In the community, our community, um, everyone pretty much knows who I am and what I do on campus. But outside of the international school setting, a lot of people are like, "What do you do?" I work at a school. Oh, do you teach English? No. So like, and then, well, what do you teach? And I usually just say I teach sports medicine. It's easier to explain it that way. And they're like, "What do you do?" Oh, I'm kind of like a physiotherapist. And so that's the easiest way to explain it. But a lot of times outside of our community, it's just assumed that I teach English because a foreigner and I'm in China.
So how do you guys see the profession growing in China?
I think our original goal, just coming from like the sports medicine or international school side, is we wanted to see more international schools like play with the idea of getting one. We know that it's not realistic because the size of international schools vary from like a couple hundred kids to my school's about 1,800. So like
Oh,
for
wow.
bigger schools, it's definitely plausible with the amount of sports and the amount of athletes that we have. The smaller schools, maybe not so much. So we've been targeting. We were trying to target the bigger schools that maybe have the funding to kind of hire an athletic trainer. And I think we were making a lot of progress pre-COVID. There's some positions that were opening up, and then with COVID, there's a bunch of hiring freezes. Just because when we host tournaments and all these other schools see, wow, this school has an athletic trainer. This is what they do at a big tournament with 700 kids. They're like, wow, we should really have that. But for those smaller schools too, what we try to do is we try to provide like a formatted EAP that they can edit to their own. We also provided like a basic emergency equipment list, which, you know, if you're hosting a tournament, you should have a spine board, you should have an AED. Here's some basic splints and tapes that we found on Taobao, like the Chinese Amazon, that you can provide and just have it on hand in case, you know, if there's an athletic trainer that travels to you, they have those supplies that they can use to provide the best care possible.
Yeah, prior to COVID, the NATA International Committee was really trying to push athletic training in the secondary schools. And so they were reaching out to us at APATS. APATS is the Asia Pacific Athletic Trainer Society. So it's kind of like our FWATA, basically. And so they were trying to get us to help them communicate with head of schools and athletic directors on how to grow the profession. And then, unfortunately, COVID put a hard stop on entrance into mainland China. And so right now, it's just very difficult to get people in. And so schools have to pick the priority of what teachers they need. And while we understand the value of an athletic trainer and that we go far beyond just helping kids before and after school, that's just for some of the schools right now, that priority is not there financially. And so like in Shanghai, we had up to 8 athletic trainers at one point, and now we're down to 3. And we actually just got one into mainland. He was coming from the States and got here 2 weeks ago. So he just finished, actually a little bit longer than that. He just finished his quarantine.
Yeah.
So
but he was also working at one of those bigger schools that have had it for a while, and they see the value and continue to advocate for it. So it's more of those smaller schools that there's just a hard stop on any expansion.
And I think in the future, when COVID is something of the past, I think that athletic training will continue to grow. We know that the Chinese government understands what athletic trainers do and sees the value, and they hired a lot of American athletic trainers to come in and help with the Olympics over the last 2 years. And so they see the value, but now it's just trying to get through what present times have to offer us.
So what do you want the AT community to know about APATS?
I think for those maybe listening that are in the region, and they would like to network, I think a big thing is to reach out. We have an Instagram, we have a website, and we have a newsletter. We try to we did put a online conference on last year where we provided CEUs, and then once COVID is over, we'll try to organize some meet and greets again, in-person conferences, just to kind of network with all the athletic trainers in the region. Because that's kind of the goal for us, is to kind of expand in the region and making sure that those of us that are in the region are kind of supported by other athletic trainers. Because there's some places where you may be the only athletic trainer in the city or in the region or in the
country.
What's the bigger one? Maybe even in the country. So just providing that network to help out. And I think maybe for those that are looking to get into the setting, I think if you have any questions, you can reach out on those social networks again, and we can try to provide our experiences for one, and maybe some suggestions to get in to the setting secondly.
When I first came out here, APATS was the opportunity for me to meet athletic trainers outside of just our conference. And I actually met a lot of the APATS members at NATA when it was in New Orleans. And so we actually had a meet and greet, and I was able to go out there and meet people it was crazy because I walked in and I was like, wait, what country are you coming from? You know, because a lot of them had just flown in, and so they're all jet lagged. And so it's an awesome opportunity. And then coming out here, it's great to just have someone that understands. Like, it's hard to write home and be like, so we have massive lightning in the area, and look at all the people standing on the field that don't really care, you know? And like, you just don't understand it because in the States, it's easy, it's black and white. But here, it's like, there is no black and white. And so you just kind of radio home when you're like, hey, I don't really know what's going on. But then at least here I could be like, all right, so Randon, this is what's going on. Like, what are your experiences with this? And it's the same, right? And so you just kind of swap those stories and help each other through. And I think the basis of that for APATS was huge. And then now to be able to grow and offer some conferences and speak more internationally and try and get some CEUs for people, that's what we're trying to do, to be able to grow while we can. Maybe just maintain status quo until COVID is done, and then continue to grow from there.
Yeah, the original purpose of this group, we've gone through several names before we settled on APATS, but the original purpose of the group was actually for CEUs. All of us, were challenged to how do we get continuing education. There's stuff online, but there wasn't stuff in person. And, this is before so much video conferencing and recording. It was all like read journal articles and do the fill-in, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So eventually, we kind of like, oh, this person, I know that person. And we just all kind of got together. Fortunately, somebody knew Mueller, who had a Mueller Sportsman at our presence, and they decided to finance our group originally, and gave us, they gave us a sponsorship, and they continue to sponsor us, and they gave us some money. Nice. And we put on a conference, and we did in Shanghai, and whoever was and everybody just came in as best as you could, and we're just scraping together, people to put on lectures, and that's where it started. And every year it's been grateful that it's been growing. It gets better and better and bigger and bigger, and that's what it was. But so now, we've kind of moved past that a little bit. And I think the hope for us is to be a bridge, I guess. Everybody has their own challenges working in their environment. So we want to be there to support each other, our members. And then for outsiders, who may be interested in coming in, we want to be able to support those people. Like, so you don't have to go through the same stuff that, it's been gone through by like 20, 30, 40, 50 other people. Like, if you give us a call, we can probably, the simple stuff that, you never think about, like how do work visas work? How do you set up a bank account? Where can I get a phone card? How do I get an apartment? It's all these little stuff you think about that don't really get considered. It's all these life experiences, for people that want to come in. And then, so we have all of our social media stuff, the website, apats.org, right? Instagram, Facebook. And then we also do, when NATA conference comes back around, we also do try to do a little social, just like every other organization out there, right? You find a little place to hang out. And so anybody out there who's interested in coming out to Asia or China specifically, look us up. Everybody is very giving and outgoing to be able to help, to give support to everybody, to athletic trainers out there.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So we like to finish up our interviews with some action. So our action item for this episode is for any athletic trainers listening who want to work internationally or in China, what would you recommend to them to get started?
Start the process early. Because, hiring international starts in October. So most of us declare by the end of September what our intentions are for the next academic year. So we're in 2021-22. So in September, we declared if we would be returning for the 2022-2023 year. And most of us have already signed our contracts by October. And then in October, from that point, then they open up all the jobs, they start to hire, they start to interview, and by Christmas, they want pretty much all of their staff hired. And granted, this is the international school setting, but it takes about 6 to 9 months to get through the visa process. And so they want to start as early as possible. And granted, that depends on every country's a little bit different, but the hiring process starts significantly earlier than it does in the US.
Yeah, I got two things. I think the first thing is keep looking at the NATA Career Center. Like they constantly push out job openings internationally. So if you're a new student and you have like a summer internship opportunity, definitely do it. And specifically for the international school setting, I think some advice is, I think we're a school foremost, and a lot of schools don't want to jump in all the way to hire an athletic trainer. So if you have the means to maybe get a teaching credential, schools are looking at that first. And if you're an athletic trainer as well, that's an added bonus that for a lot of us has transitioned into a full-time athletic training position. So it's just a foot in the door to start off as teaching, and then, building those relationships and advocating for the profession will create a new job that we know there's value seen in. So 2 things.
The recommendation I would say it would be research. Lots and lots of research. I mean, and unless, like any other job, you got a fast track, somebody who's going to get you in, okay, that's great. But for a lot of other people, that's not the case. So research and give yourself a real timeline. I mean, this stuff, you're probably looking, a year or 2 out before you could actually really figure out, as Rizzo said, timetables are different. This is not the traditional hiring cycles. Sports cycles can be different. Everything can be different. So research, everything is out there. Look at NATA International Committee. Look at, World Federation. Look at, all those other international organizations out, Bazarat and JADO and whatever part of the world you want to go to, But don't limit. I mean, there's also, like physio associations and sporting, associations, and there's all kinds of stuff. Just collect information and like the sports analogy, right? You got to go scout. You got to go scout what you're going to do. So get that scouting report together.
So if you guys are interested in working internationally, I hope some of those tips really helped you. If you want to know more about APATS or some of the schools that they were talking about, head over to the show notes. We have tons of information, tons of links for you guys, which you can also find where our Instagram is, which is where we share all of our future episode topics. So you can add, this was an education episode, but every other episode we do story episodes. So if you guys want to share your stories, make sure you go to our Instagram and we post prompts that you can respond to and have a chance to get featured on the show, which is really exciting. If you want to join our Facebook group, which is where we'll share some cool pictures, not only from this episode, but also just in general, a place for you guys to network with other clinicians, head over to facebook.com/group/AT Corner podcast and join our AT Corner community. I think that's all we have to say. Make sure you share this with a friend if you enjoyed it. Not only does that help us, but it would totally help APATS too.
Yes, absolutely. Also, it's getting crunch time.
Like super crunch time.
For those CEUs. The deadline's approaching. It's coming fast, and I'm sure there's some people that have procrastinated.
We have a couple options for you guys. We have MedBridge, which is a 1-year subscription. So if you purchase it before the end of the year, then not only is it going to be good for this reporting period, but it's also going to be good for next reporting period. We have a code for you. Use code ATCorner, all caps, one word.
They have a lot of great content on there. A lot of quality educational stuff.
And all on demand. And then we also have our latest 5 CEU episodes are free. They used to all be free. So if you listen to past podcasts, sorry about that. We had to change because we literally were crashing the servers, guys. So we had to change it. Our latest 5 will always be free. So moving forward, as we create new ones, then it will still be the latest 5, whatever those latest 5 are. So as long as you're keeping up with those will also be in the show notes. So
yes.
Head over to our website to check those out.
And special thanks to Precision AT for making those educational episodes CEU available. And if you want to go past those 5 free CEUs, you can purchase any of our previous CEU episodes, and you can even buy a season 1 package from Precision AT.
And some of them do have bonus content, including bonus CEUs. So make sure you check that out.
Yeah, I think that about does it.
All right, Randy.
Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.